Good afternoon. On behalf of the West Virginia MGMA, I am pleased to welcome you all here today to our collaborative webinar series. We have a collaborative series among the West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Virginia MGMAs. Our host today is the West Virginia MGMA, and we are very pleased to have with us Jan Haley from the Practice Management Institute. Jan brings more than 30 years of experience in healthcare with proficiency in administration, coding, and billing roles. She joined St. Joseph Physician Network, located in Mishawaka, Indiana, as the Director of Quality in November 2015. And in 2019, she transitioned into the Director of Care Management with the Select Health Network, which allowed her to expand beyond the physician network to lead teams across the health system and work closely with providers, management, staff, community, and payers to develop strategies for process improvement. Jan holds a Master of Health Leadership degree and 4 professional certifications in office management, coding, and compliance. I'm so pleased to see such a great group here today. I want to make sure. Yep. And just we already have a quick question. Yeah, we do have, you will get access to the recording and some presentation materials from Jan after the program. So yes, that you will get that. And we will be, I'll be monitoring the Q&A and the chat box throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, you can jot them down. If they're super important, pressing questions, I will get them to Jan right away, but she will save some time at the end to hit all of our questions. Thank you for joining us. And Jan, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you so much, Erin, for that nice introduction. And welcome everyone to today's session on leadership fatigue. As you're likely aware, more and more leaders are reporting emotional exhaustion and really finding it increasingly difficult to cope with the everyday demands of their job. So in today's session, we're going to cover several different things. We're going to discuss exactly what leadership fatigue is. We'll also give you some symptoms to be on the lookout for so you can recognize those and take action before they get too severe. Also discuss managing self-care, how we measure success. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time on work-life balance. I know we hear a lot about work-life balance, but really what is it and how do we achieve that? And that'll lead us into time management. And of course, regardless if leadership is burned out or if they're fatigued, we still need to take care of our staff. We still need to understand what their needs are. So we are going to spend some time talking about how we prevent staff burnout, and then finally, how to become a happier person. So leadership fatigue can be defined as a loss of motivation, loss of passion for what you do, and also decreased energy. You may find if you have leadership fatigue that you have difficulty guiding your team members. Sometimes it's really difficult to take care of others' needs if you aren't taking care of your own. I have had a lot of leaders tell me in the past 2.5 years since the pandemic started, I feel like I'm just in survival mode. And that definitely is a sign of leadership fatigue. And then also you may find yourself lacking some confidence. Leadership fatigue is one of the significant risks that leaders need to be aware of. High achieving leaders often try to handle everything themselves. And because of that, they often neglect to recognize signs of burnout. Leaders usually have a passion for what they do, so they have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on themselves to excel at their job. When leadership fatigue sets in, you will have feelings of being overwhelmed. You might find it difficult to meet the demands of your job. You may also see that productivity is decreasing, and what was once your high energy level, you may see that being replaced with physical fatigue. You may also feel depressed. You may start feeling pessimistic, and you may even feel resentful, like you've got nothing left to offer. So leadership fatigue rarely stays in the office. it affects other aspects of your life, including family and social life. And you may even start losing interest in hobbies and activities that you once enjoyed. So because of that, it's important to look at the symptoms. But I think it's also important that we take a look at COVID. And I know everyone is like, oh no, here we go, another COVID thing. But we have seen an increase in leadership fatigue over the last 2.5 years. So it's important to understand how that has affected you. And so we've been exposed to physical and mental exhaustion. Just the pandemic itself, a lot of the changes that we had to make in the office, and we've also had to make a lot of difficult decisions. So think back of March and April of 2020. Some of you may have had to furlough long-term employees. You probably had to implement telehealth very rapidly, probably had patients that needed care, but you weren't sure how you were going to get them into the office or how they were going to get the surgeries they needed. So a lot of difficult decisions that led to that physical and mental exhaustion. Also, healthcare workers, whether they're clinical or non-clinical, have been exposed to death and suffering. And a lot of you may have even had death and suffering within your families or different friends and so forth. And once again, regardless if you're clinical or non-clinical, there's been a risk of infection. And we've all experienced those challenging work conditions. And we continue to see those. Across the country, we're still seeing open positions that are very difficult to fill and working with limited resources. So the Journal of General Internal Medicine did a survey of more than 500 healthcare workers and also first responders. And the data that they reported was actually pretty alarming. So 38% of the respondents said that they suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. 74% said they had experienced depression at one point. 75% experienced anxiety. And really alarming is that 15% of those respondents reported thoughts of suicide or self-harm. So because of this, we really have to bring this leadership fatigue and burnout to the forefront of what we're doing. So the most important thing, of course, is recognize the symptoms. Don't just ignore the symptoms. Usually symptoms will start with those feelings of irritation, anger, denial. Irritability also stems from feeling inadequate or unimportant. And an increasing perception that you can't perform anything as well as you did prior to the pandemic or prior to what you were doing before. So eventually, because of the irritability and anger and so forth, personal and business relationships can suffer for that. Also, lacking motivation is another symptom, along with that feeling uncertain and feeling of helplessness. When we lack motivation, we start to become detached. So detachment can be defined as being connected from yourself or from your environment. It may result in emotional or physical withdrawal from your work or other obligations, both emotionally and physically. And then you may, when you start becoming detached, you may find yourself doing things that are out of the norm for you. So for example, perhaps you're calling in sick more than what you used to do, or you avoid returning important phone calls, or avoid doing tasks that are important, but you just don't have the energy to do them. Another thing that I have seen is when folks start getting to that detachment stage, because a lot of people are working from home, they're working in a hybrid situation, they start working from home more to keep from having those interactions at the office. And then feeling tired, overwhelmed, or burned out is another symptom. When you're feeling tired or overwhelmed, that can often lead to chronic fatigue. So this is when you feel tired, stressed, you might feel weakened physically and mentally. So you may have a sense of anxiety for what lies ahead on any given day. And then feeling sad or depressed, you feel somewhat depressed or often helpless. You could feel stuck and seriously stressed. But a very important point when it comes to depression or sadness is if you get to the point of feeling that the world would be better without you, you need to get immediate help with that. And that's really something that a lot of healthcare workers have felt in the past several years. Also having trouble sleeping. There's a lot to be said about sleep. But if you're having trouble sleeping, that can lead to insomnia. So you may have difficulty falling asleep or remaining asleep. Insomnia could become chronic, where you can't sleep no matter how tired you are. And then finally, having trouble concentrating. So you may have trouble concentrating. You may find yourself being forgetful. You may find yourself having trouble focusing on a certain tasks. So when things get to this point and you can't complete your tasks at hand, everything starts piling up at that point. So you don't get things done today, it piles up for tomorrow. And before you know it, you've got so much on your to-do list that it's really overwhelming at that point. So how can we reduce leadership fatigue? Well, first of all, learn to manage your time efficiently. Try to be organized, schedule realistically, and don't overcommit yourself. Now, I know as leaders, that is much easier said than done. However, you do need to learn to set priorities and boundaries, and you need to learn to say no. When you just keep taking on more and more and more, you will get to the point where you just simply cannot keep up with it all. Also, anticipate and prepare for situations. This goes for both work and home. Don't spend time trying to do things the way it's always been done or finding the perfect way. You need to look for options, but you also need to set realistic expectations for yourself and also accept that good enough is good enough. Stop trying to strive for perfection, because a lot of times that will hinder you and from doing a good job. Also, leave work at home. Don't take it home. Define when and where you will work and stick to it. Now, I know that that's another thing that's extremely hard for leaders to do. However, when you get at home, you want to be able to focus on your family, focus on your hobbies, focus on your friends. So if you're one that is continually bringing work home, try to go in a few minutes early in the morning when you're there without all of the hustle and bustle of the day to get a few things done, or maybe even stay a few minutes later in the evening. But try your best to leave that work at home. Excuse me. Also, we have a lot of leaders that are either working from home or they're doing hybrid remote. And what I've heard from a lot of leaders is they've set their office up at home. They'll work all day, they have dinner, and then everything's already set up. So they go back to their home office and they continue working. And it's really difficult to disconnect at that point. So if you're finding yourself doing that, shut things down so you don't have a tendency to go back and work a few more hours in the evening. Also, find a mentor. A mentor, there's so much to be said when you have somebody that you can share concerns with. You can ask for help if needed. So develop a support system and have at least one good friend who you can confide in and rely on for help. And then care for yourself. When I think about caring for yourself, I always think about being on a plane. You know, we hear it all the time. If the oxygen mask comes down, make sure you put it on yourself first. And that's so true. We have to really learn to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. So schedule regular breaks. Make sure that you're engaging in those leisure activities that you enjoy, and use your PTO. I read an interesting article a couple weeks ago where people have really been stockpiling PTO over the last few years and not taking vacations and so forth. And I'm sure that that's leading to leadership fatigue and burnout also. So take that vacation, use that PTO, and then eat properly. Of course, you want to sleep and stay physically active. And remember that when you are making time for yourself, you're making an investment that allows you to be more readily available for all your other responsibilities. So another thing to do when caring for yourself is look for and enjoy humor on a regular basis and bring joy to work. I know when we had a lot of folks working from home, I heard time and time again that that was one of the things that employees missed. They missed that interaction and that fun that they had at work. And then finally, find your passion. When you're passionate about something, it can really motivate you. All right, so what are some of the things that we can do for self-care? Communicate with your coworkers, communicate with your supervisors and employees about job stress. Remember that you're not the only one that is experiencing stress. Your employees are also, so we need to communicate, have open communication. Talk openly about how the pandemic and other issues are affecting work. Identify factors that cause stress and work together to identify those solutions. When you're identifying solutions, bring your staff into the mix. Ask them, what do you think? What are your ideas? Remember that they are boots on the ground, so they will have a lot of good suggestions. Remind yourself that everyone is in an unusual situation with limited resources. I know most healthcare systems now are having trouble finding adequate nursing staff in the offices. There's a shortage of medical assistants. So just remind yourself that you are not alone when it comes to those things. Also, another thing that you can do is access mental health resources. Most insurances now have some type of mental health resources. A lot of your larger health systems have even internal mental health resources. Identify and accept those things which you do not have control over. And there have been plenty of those things in the last couple years. So we just need to identify them, we need to accept them, and then we need to move on. Recognize that you're performing a crucial role, not just in fighting the pandemic, but providing health care for your community. Also increase your sense of control by keeping a consistent daily routine whenever possible. And I think that's one of the things during the pandemic that so many leaders struggled with, not just the leaders, but our staff also, that every day we were learning something new. Think about telehealth for a moment. Most of you probably weren't doing a lot of telehealth when the pandemic hit, and then we had to learn it very quickly. And then every insurance was doing something a little bit different. And one week we were told to do it this way, the next week something totally different. So when we can get those routines back and some standard work, it really makes life a lot easier. Once again, get that adequate sleep, and then make time to eat healthy meals. Also take breaks to rest and stretch, or check in with supportive colleagues, coworkers, friends, and family. I know a lot of folks, they try to get that morning walk in because it energizes them. And then when away from work, you want to get exercise when you can. Spend some time outdoors. There's a lot to be said about the great outdoors. Sometimes just getting that fresh air can revive you. And then also do things you enjoy during non-work hours. And then take breaks from watching, reading, and listening to news stories. You want to make sure that you're taking some breaks there also. And then seek help for alcohol or drug abuse. Okay, so measuring success. So this slide here just kind of shows a little bit of how different people measure success. So I want you to think about something. Does happiness create success? Or does success create happiness? Most of us have been brought up to believe that if we do certain things, we study hard, we get into a good college, we get good grades, after that we get a good job, then we're going to be happy. But is that really the case? So this first pie chart here, at one point, success was really measured by salary and title. So if we had a good title, we made a good salary, that was considered success. But in today's world, it's much different. We measure success with different areas of our life. So we measure success by how much personal time do we have to do the things that we really enjoy. Where's my self-esteem? Am I building friendships? What about wellness? Am I staying healthy? And what are some achievements outside of work that you're really proud of and that give you some great satisfaction? Do you have time to be creative and time to spend with your family? What about personal growth? Not all personal growth is tied to your job. It could be several things that you do. Maybe you're a writer, or maybe you have an interest in music that can extend that personal growth. And then, of course, financial. So find yourself, what's important to you? Ask yourself, what's important to me? How do I measure my success? And it may not be all of these things on the second wheel, but it may be a lot of them. So really ask yourself, at the end of the day, how am I measuring success for me? And that's really what you need to do, not necessarily measure success by what somebody else tells you. So all of that we heard before, that we just need a good title and a salary and we're going to be happy, probably isn't going to hold truth there. All right, work-life balance. We hear a lot about work-life balance. So work-life balance is about achieving a balance between our obligations that we have at work and our professional life, and then our obligations and responsibilities in family life. Achieving a balance between one's family life and professional life not only benefits the employee, but it also benefits the employer. So when we have a work-life imbalance, there's a lot of different things that go on. It'll manifest physical and psychological symptoms. So think back to the first couple of slides that we went over. These are, when we have that work-life balance, we start feeling that fatigue. We might be complaining of headaches and tension and stress and burnout. We have a hard time concentrating. We may be losing self-esteem, experiencing depression, and so forth. So keep in mind that a lot of these symptoms that are leading to that leadership fatigue can be because of that work-life imbalance. And then over the long term, these impacts become extensive. They'll spill over into different spheres of the worker's professional life. So you may start seeing reduced revenue due to lost employment. You may all of a sudden find that your career is not progressing, that your social network is shrinking, and that you just have lack of time overall. Another thing we need to consider when we talk about work-life balance or imbalance, work-life imbalance also impacts gender equality within society as a whole. This is because women are often the ones bearing the brunt of any non-work imbalances, since they continue to be the ones primarily responsible for household and family related obligations, while they're still trying to go to work every day, perform well at work, and so forth. So women are less likely to accept promotions. Sometimes they're reluctant to accept management positions if they're unable to get the necessary support required to meet the needs of the household. So let's talk about the employer. So employers really can benefit by having a work-life balance policy. When they put a focus on work-life balance, first of all, it promotes employee recruitment and retention. Those are the companies, those are the health systems that people gravitate to when they know that, thinking back of our pie chart, that they're supporting that second pie chart with all of the different things that create that work-life balance and that success will. It also increases employee engagement and performance. It reduces absenteeism, tardiness, and employee turnover. So when we respect our employees' needs outside of work, it really does reduce that absenteeism. It also improves organizational performance and reduces incidences of perceived injustice or inaccuracies. It also builds a favorable work environment, and probably most importantly, it improves the organization's image. So when we have a culture that promotes that work-life balance, that's where employees, candidates, they're going to migrate to that health system, to that office, to that medical office, because they have a good reputation of supporting that work-life balance. And if you think about that work-life balance, that's when employees start feeling respected, they start feeling valued. And once they start feeling respected and valued, that's when productivity goes up. So it's a win-win situation. So overachievers, is there really such a thing as an overachiever? All of us want to be successful. However, there are some people who are extremely proficient in their line of work. They accomplish great things despite impossible odds. They amaze us with their tenacity and their ability to master their chosen vocation. But yet we have others that never seem to fulfill their true potential. They throw in the towel often. They seem to fall short of what they're capable of. So what's the difference between these two sets of people? When we think of our colleagues and maybe staff members, or maybe even yourself, and you think of yourself as an overachiever, chances are you find your passion. You know what you're passionate about. You find meaning in your work. So it's no longer just going to work and working 9 to 5. You find meaning in everything you do. You're dedicated. And finally, you're optimistic. And so that's the difference between these two sets of people, that they are passionate and they're dedicated. So time management, are you currently strapped for time? This is something we all hear, probably most of us say it. I just wish I had a few more hours in the day. I just wish I had a few more hours in the week. This week, I wish I could tell you how many times I have heard, I can't believe it's the middle of August already. I can't believe the kids are going back to school. So there does seem like there's never enough hours in the day to accomplish everything that we either want or need to do. So if you're getting stressed trying to find the time to complete all the tasks on your to-do list, just know that you're certainly not alone. Lack of time makes you feel overwhelmed, and it can also affect your quality of life. So remember that time is the most precious commodity that we've been given, because once it's lost, it's gone forever. Each one of us only has 24 hours a day. That's it. No one's going to give us any more. And it also doesn't matter who we are or how much money we make. Time is the ultimate level playing field. We can't borrow time, we can't buy more time, and we cannot save wasted time for another day. So time is the one gift that all of us have been dealt evenly and fairly. So it doesn't matter if you're a janitor, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO, or it doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States or Oprah Winfrey. We have all been dealt the same amount of time. So how I like to think of time is in buckets. So this is my personal buckets, are my personal buckets that I put on here. So the 168 represents how many hours there are in a week. So you are not going to get any more time than 168 hours. So I put this 168 hours in different buckets. I have to sleep. I couldn't function if I don't sleep. I have to work. And then my miscellaneous bucket is time with my family, time for my hobbies, for church, and other things that are important to me. So when you start thinking about time in buckets, it'll start putting a little bit more perspective. So then when someone says to you, hey, can you take on this project? And you're already at your limit in your work bucket, what do? You have to start borrowing from one of the other buckets. Now, if you're like me, I always borrow from my sleep bucket, and then I pay the price for it later. So I would really encourage each of you to sit down and think about your buckets of time. Where do you spend your time? You may have more than 3 buckets, but really try to think about that, and it'll really put in perspective exactly where you spend your time, where you could possibly shift a little bit. But this is a really good exercise to do. So time management is the process of planning and organizing the time that is spent performing tasks or working on projects, along with creating a timeline for each task to complete it. So if you are working on a project or working on whatever it might be, you need to put a timeline, because if you don't put a timeline, each day moves into the next. And before you know it, you're 2 days out from a big project and you're scampering. That's when you're staying up all night trying to get your work done and so forth. So write those tasks down and then create a timeline for the completion of each. Also keep in mind that time can never really be managed, but we can manage ourselves. So when we think about those 3 buckets, that's how we manage ourselves. And once we do that, then we start managing the time. This slide here is actually from the time management metrics by Stephen Covey. And I think this really puts things into perspective for leaders. So everything we do can probably be put into one of these 4 categories. So we have the important and non-important on the side, and then urgent and non-urgent at the top. So in our first category, these are important tasks. They're usually urgent, and these are things that we have to do now. Think about in your own office. These could be an urgent patient request. It could be a safety issue that's going on in the office, or a quality issue, or it could be a project that has been given to you that you have a deadline on and you have to work on it. These are your top priority. They're important. They're also urgent. The next category, these are non-urgent items, but they're still very important items. So these are tasks that you have to plan, or they're going to move into that urgent bucket. So these are things such as relationship building. When was the last time you rounded with your staff individually? That's building relationships. If you take the time to round with your staff on a regular basis, you take those little things that may be irritating the employee or something that they feel needs to be changed, and you're able to take care of that before it turns into a big issue. Some other things that would fall into this category are new opportunities, also strategic thinking. If we're planning for change in the office, we need to really do that strategic thinking. And then also things such as improving systems or policies or workflows. The next one, the third category, these are not necessarily important tasks, but they're still urgent. So these are tasks that you may be able to delegate to other staff members. These are things that are not value-added tasks. So some things that would fall into this category, maybe some interruptions that you experience, some phone calls, some emails or meetings, or some distractions. So think about all of your meetings that you have to attend in a given week, and there's probably times that you're double or triple booked, or maybe you're not double or triple booked, but maybe there's a meeting that you could send a staff member to instead of you attending that. There might be some tasks that you could delegate to somebody else. And then finally, this fourth category, these are things that are non-urgent and they're also not important. So these are tasks that you may want to eliminate, or they may fall into that third category. So some of the things that you think about to eliminate, these would be just busy work. It could be time wasters. I would challenge each and every one of you to go back to your office and really look at some of your workflows and ask yourself, are these things still as important as they used to be? Or is it something that we could eliminate because we moved to a different EHR? Is it, it could be several different things, but really take inventory of the workflows in your office and make sure that you don't have something that could be eliminated. Okay, delegation. As leaders, I think this is probably one of the hardest things for leaders and for managers, but it's also has a lot of positive influence in the office. So when you delegate work, you're doing a couple of things. You're not just shifting some of the work from you to somebody else, but you're also empowering someone else. Employees love it when they can help out their manager, their director. So, but when you delegate, you want to give specific instructions for the job to be done. Preferably, you do this in writing. When you write down the instructions, that also helps the person that you're delegating to really understand what is it that you're needing, how do I do this? Also, you want to monitor progress, but you don't want to micromanage. So maybe set up some meetings if it's a big project. We're going to meet every Monday at 10 o'clock to see where the progress is, to see if you need anything from me. But be careful that if you're delegating, you're not micromanaging that project. If you're doing that, you might as well do it yourself. Also set definite timelines for accomplishments and completion of tasks, and then give encouragement consistently. This is exactly what I wanted. You've got this down. If you have to give some feedback and have them change, that's okay too. But do give encouragement consistently. And then organize and prioritize. Look at your own schedule and assure that you are working on the important things that have the most value in your office. So I like to prioritize with, here's my most important things that I have to do. These are important, least important. And then I've got a few things that, when I get around to it, that's okay. I also do my emails this way. I'm sure everyone is bombarded with emails on a daily basis. I get a lot of publications per day. So when I get my publications, I peruse the highlights. And if it's something that I need to know now, and maybe it's a Medicare policy change or something of that nature, I'm going to read that. That's important. However, if it's something that is of interest to me, but I don't need to know it now, I put it in my file. And when I have time, that's when I sit and read that. And then there's some publications that come through on a daily basis. I peruse it. There's really nothing that is going to influence decisions I make or knowledge that I need. So I just delete that. And then keep a calendar as a reminder of periodic activities. So if you've got certain things that you have to do on a monthly or weekly basis, put that in a calendar. Maybe you have to send a certain report by the 5th of the month. Put that on your calendar for the 3rd so you don't forget it. Nothing's worse than having a home office or somebody asking you month after month after month, hey, did you send this? Oh, I forgot, let me send it now. Get that on your calendar so you're automatically doing it. Okay, some tips for time management. Identify your peak performance hours. Everybody's a little bit different when they're at their best. We hear this all the time. I'm a morning person. I'm an afternoon person. I function best at nighttime. But really identify when your peak performance is, and then do your most important tasks during that time. That's when you're at your peak. Also set goals. Have a to-do list with timelines for short-term and long-term tasks. There's a lot to be said about a to-do list. If you don't write down what you have to do, you're going to be missing important projects. You're going to be missing important deadlines. And then that's just going to cause that stress to go up, which is going to lead into that leadership fatigue that we have all experienced at least a time or two. Prioritize, identify urgent versus important tasks, always put timelines on things. And then remember, accomplishing important tasks, it'll reduce those urgent tasks. It'll keep things in that important category rather than moving it over into that urgent category. When things start getting into that urgent category, that's when we feel like all we do in the course of a day is put fires out. Get organized, keep notes on the progress of items on the to-do list. We talked about delegation, but really delegate which tasks can be delegated to others. Now, I will mention when you're delegating, be careful that you're not always delegating to the same person. Remember that when you delegate projects and you delegate certain things, that is also building that other person. So you want to make sure that you're giving everybody ample opportunity. It becomes very easy. I'm going to give this to Susie because I know she's always going to follow through. It's just easier to do that. So make sure that you're training and giving that work across the board. Focus on high value activities, and then block time for each task. And then also consider using a timer. So what this is let's say, for example, you're working on a big project and you're going to every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to set aside 2 hours to work on this project. If you use that timer at the end of the 2 hours, move on to something else. You've dedicated the time. You've probably used your peak time to do that task, and then you can move on. Batch similar tasks in the same block of time, allowing you to easily move from one to another. And then avoid multitasking. There has been a lot of studies in the last few years that show when people multitask, they're not as productive. And every time I read an article on this, I think back to a few years, it really hasn't been that long ago. Almost every resume that you look at says multitasker. And, you know, I'm really good at multitasking, but it's been shown that if you work on one thing and you complete it and you move to the next, that you actually raise productivity and errors go down. Be efficient. Stop running after perfection. Remember that good sometimes is just good enough. And when we run after perfection, a lot of times what we do is we hinder progress. Allow for short breaks. The human brain needs a break about every 90 minutes to recharge and maintain the highest level of concentration. This isn't just true for yourself, but also for your staff. Make sure that they're taking those short breaks. It doesn't have to be a long break. It doesn't have to be 15, 20, 30 minutes. It just needs to be those short breaks to recharge. And then review your day. What did you accomplish today? And you can mark off your to-do list. If you're not keeping a to-do list, chances are the day ends, and you may even say to yourself, I feel like I didn't accomplish anything today. But when you look at your to-do list and you see that you have marked off several different things, it starts giving you a feeling of accomplishment. And then when you've added things to your to-do list, it doesn't seem as overwhelming. And then also begin prioritizing for the next day. And I would add to this, not only prioritize for the next day, but prioritize for the week. So either on Friday or Sunday, whichever, early Monday morning, look through all of your meetings for the next week. Do you have everything you need? Is there anything that was assigned to you that maybe you missed? So you're prepared. Okay, we cannot talk about leadership fatigue without talking about staff burnout. So healthcare organizations are being more proactive in the prevention of burnout among their staff. After all, it's in the provider's best interest to keep expenses down, and a way of doing that is to focus on the well-being of the employees, because that can certainly help costs. Remember that when an employee leaves a company, there's a cost to advertise, there's a cost to recruit, and there's a cost to train. So we need to do what we can to keep our employees. Plus, we've seen during this great resignation, per se, that we have had a lot of turnover. So we need to really start working on this so staff does not leave. So boost morale. How do you boost morale? First of all, be transparent. There is a lot going on in healthcare right now. We have healthcare systems across the country that are downsizing. We've got provider offices that are shifting over to healthcare systems. We have offices that were part of healthcare systems becoming independent, but be transparent. Let employees know when you can exactly what's going on. If you don't and you're not transparent, they will hear things through the rumor mill. And once they hear things through the rumor mill, that's when they start thinking, oh, I don't know if my job's secure. I better go over to XYZ health system. Promote work-life balance. Be understanding if somebody has to leave for a parent-teacher conference and so forth. Make laughter part of the day. When I see offices that have very little turnover, what I usually see are people that get along, they truly like each other, and they laugh together. Make recognition public. You want to make it loud and you want to make it proud. So recognize those recognitions, not just personal recognitions, but also if you're working on something as an office. So let's say, for example, you've got a initiative going on. We're going to see how many mammograms we can get scheduled so we can hit our goal. And you've hit that goal, make sure you're recognizing them. Also acknowledge life events and losses. Recognize that that employee has a new grandchild or a new baby. Recognize if they've lost a family member recently and how can we support you. And then training. Well-trained employees will stay. It makes things easy for them, and also standard work makes things much easier. When we don't have standard work, our employees start feeling like, I don't know, whatever I did yesterday, we're not doing it today. And I don't know why. I feel like I can never do my job. I feel like I never have tools to do my job. So make sure employees are well trained. Also, you may think about cross training, especially today when we're all what I call resource challenged. You may consider that. And then motivate your team. Foster a team environment. Your staff will work. They'll be more productive if they feel like they're part of a team. They want to feel like they're part of something bigger than just themselves. Also, do performance reviews. Employees want feedback. Feedback motivates employees. Don't wait until something's negative. Don't wait until that yearly review. Do that rounding on a regular basis. Sit down with your employee. Tell me how things are going. What do you need from me? That's really a motivator for employees. Also, give staff a voice. Remember that they are the boots on the ground. Listen to them. That will motivate them. Don't skip on gratitude and praise. Also, just giving small gifts sometimes can help. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be something as simple as bringing donuts and coffee in. Thank you for what you do. Designate project heads. Once again, when you start delegating work, it really lifts the employee up. But remember, you have to give them autonomy. Once again, round with your employees. It's so important. And then celebrate those successes and inspire pride in their work. All right, some other things. It's important for management and providers to take an active role in employee engagement to ensure that burnout doesn't occur and significant turnover doesn't happen. Employers should be proactive, identifying employees' concerns as opposed to letting them get out of hand. And once again, that's where that rounding can really be beneficial. Also, social engagement. Offices that have a low turnover, like I said, they have fun together. And I know during the pandemic, it was a lot harder to get together, but try to do things such as picnics. You might have a bowling night or an ice cream social. But even if you're not doing in-person things, do something virtual. Do a virtual happy hour. Play some games virtually. It's a lot of fun. I know probably 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, I kept hearing from my team, we miss each other. We miss each other. So we did a parking lot happy hour. You know, we were able to stay social distanced, but just use your creativity there. But social engagement's important. And then employers need to encourage breaks so that their staff doesn't overwork themselves to the point of burnout. Remember that just those short breaks allows that employee to walk away from the stress and regroup. Continuous education is important. Companies should promote and encourage ongoing learning. And then this will allow the employees to feel confident. It'll also make them feel like they're in control of their career. And healthy habits, sponsoring some workout classes might be beneficial, or maybe even doing a walking challenge. But that will promote those healthy habits. It'll also encourage that social interaction too, and employees will become engaged. All right, so becoming a happier person, how do we do this? First of all, practice daily gratitude. Take time each day to focus on positive aspects of your life. It's powerful. You can just jot down, what are 3 things today that I am really grateful for? Doesn't have to be a lot, but just do this on a daily basis. And then maybe not just you do it, but if you're rounding with your team, if you're huddling, maybe make that where you have your team do that. Have one person do it one day, another person another, but it really starts making us feel like we're very grateful. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be maybe a dinner that you had that you're really grateful for. Maybe it was time that you spent with family or friends, or it could be a productive meeting that you had at work. Also, love yourself. So that's something else too. I think we're all hard on ourselves, and we forget sometimes to just really take pride in what we do and love ourselves. So there's numerous things about yourself that you can love. They can be big things, they can be small things. Kindness is one. Maybe you're a very kind person. Could be your sense of humor. It could be a skill that you have. Something as simple as just being an avid reader. But when I do my daily gratitude, I kind of put in what I love about myself at the same time, and do this on a consistent basis. If you just do it once in a while, it's not really going to change a lot. But if you do it on a regular basis, you'll start seeing the change in your attitude and so forth. And then practice kindness. I love it when I see, you can be anything but be kind. And there's a lot of research that shows when we're kind to others, we experience a dopamine spike and become happier. So really, when you think about that, giving really is better than receiving. If you take the time to practice 3 acts of kindness each day, you'll boost your level of happiness. And then once again, this does not have to be any huge thing. This can be things very simple. It can be opening a door for someone. It could be maybe buying a colleague a cup of coffee, or maybe giving money to charity, or calling somebody that is in need. And then meditation. Meditation is a great way to center your mind and become happier, especially if practiced consistently. Pick a specific time each day, sit with no distractions for a few minutes, and just focus on your breath. That's it. If your mind wanders, just return back to your breathing and your attention to it. And that really will help. You can even meditate throughout the day. And then exercise. The last way to increase happiness is to exercise daily. It has a powerful effect on our overall health and mood. And too many of us, we, sit all day, we're at our desk, we're in meetings, we come home, we fix dinner, we become couch potatoes, we watch TV. So really try to get that exercise in. Maybe make it a habit that either before or after dinner, you're going to go for a walk. Or if walking outside is not your thing, maybe you're happier going to the gym and using the treadmill. But do that on a regular basis. It'll definitely make you much happier. So in conclusion, although the incidence of leadership fatigue remains high, there are steps that you can take to reverse it and prevent it even before it starts. So remember that you need to recognize the early signs of stress. Seek professional help if necessary. There is no shame in that whatsoever. There's a lot of resources. Most employers have some type of resource available. And then learn to practice those coping skills that we talked about. It's also equally important for employers to come alongside their staff in the fight against burnout. We need our employers to give support. They need to provide a safe and healthy work environment. They need to engage employees in decision-making processes. And really, we need to ensure that it's a domino effect. Our employers need to make us feel valued. We need to make our staff feel valued, and so on and so forth. And then these approaches to mitigating burnout can lead to happier, healthier leaders. It'll lower rates of employee turnover. And ultimately, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about this, but ultimately, when we have we lessen that burnout, we take care of the leadership fatigue, we're going to be able to provide better care for our patients. So I do want to leave you with this quote. This is probably one of my favorite quotes. I use it often on huddles, and I read this to myself a lot of times when I start feeling like I'm losing my passion or my commitment to certain things. And this is by Eric Bostic. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Something drags you out of a warm bed in the morning. Maybe it's your kids, your job, your hobby, or the legacy you're trying to leave. Maybe it's something smaller, like a favorite mug of dark roast coffee at work or a pair of brand new running shoes. What fuels you? Find your passion, grab onto it like your life depends on it, and use it to pull yourself to your goals. So find out what fuels you, what is going to make you find your passion. All right, with that being said, Erin, I'll take any questions if there are any. I want to thank everyone for their time today.
Are there any questions for Jan? We had a great group, Jan. We got up to 76 people in the room. I feel like I tricked you when Jan and I have been meeting. I told her 30 or 40 people, and we had quite a turnout today. So thank you all very much for joining us. That was quite a group.
Okay, well, if anyone does think of anything, you can certainly send those questions to info@pmimd.com, and they will get those questions over to me.
Oh, hold on 1 second. One question, the rounding, how often do you recommend rounding?
So I try to round with my staff one-on-one at least once a month. I think you have to find what works for you. If you've got a huge staff, that it might be a little bit further out. If you've got a smaller staff, you may even be able to do it more often. But when I round one-on-one with my staff, I try to make it very informal. Just hey, do you have a few minutes? Let's sit down and chat. I try not to be on one side of my desk and have them on the other side, because then they feel like they're being brought to the gas chamber. So I try to sit at a table or go into a conference room and just have that casual conversation. How are things going? Is there anything you need for me? Maybe we had a workflow change. How's that going for you? But it doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be 5-10 minutes.
Great. You're getting several different thanks and some kudos, lots of good points today. Brandy asked, does your company have a morale fund? And if so, how much do you allocate per head, and how is it typically used?
Yes, and we do not have a kudos fund, but there are certain things that you can do, depending if your company reimburses you or if you have to do it. One of the things that I have always done prior to the pandemic is I host my staff here at my home twice a year. We have not done that since the pandemic, but we're going to do it this year. But I usually do a Christmas party at my home and then a summer party. And they look forward to that. And I keep it very simple. I don't have them do a carry-in. I provide things for them. We did switch our EHRs this year, and I went in early on Monday morning, the day that we went live, and had a breakfast catered. Little things like that can mean a lot. You don't have to really do a whole lot of expense, but for those companies that are providing that, kudos to them.
Yes, agree. Thank you for your questions, everyone. And I want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Jan, for all the great information. And thank you to West Virginia, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, all of our partner states today. And look for our September webinar in the collaborative series next month. So thanks, Jan, and I hope you have a great weekend.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining today.
Bye-bye.